we who love Sondheim love his work and come back to it again and again and like discover something new every time. And it's that unmistakable humanity in everything single thing he put up on the stage. Like even Sweeney Todd has deeply human moments, and like for all the jokes, for all the witty lyrics, like that is the core that keeps this repertoire alive.
Has deeply human pie fillings as well.
Yeah.
Nicely put.
We'll get to those, Weston. Don't you worry.
You got to be careful with your coriander.
On the Dallas Opera Network, you're listening to Opera Box Score.
Let's get ready to rumble!
Wherever you are, however you're listening, it's America's talk radio show about opera. It's Opera Box Score. I'm your host, George Cederquist, joined by Oliver Camacho, Matt Cummings, Weston Williams, and Ashlee Hardgrave. All right, this week on the show, composer and lyricist Stephen Sondheim died at home in Roxbury, Connecticut on the day after Thanksgiving. He was 91. We've put together a pseudo awards show to celebrate Sondheim's life and work. No 2-minute drill, no inside the huddle, just the OBS team giving out the first and probably last Sondheim Awards. If you're watching on TDO, make sure you subscribe to the podcast, Stitcher Radio, favorite the show, Apple Podcasts. Email us your hot takes on Sondheim's work, operaboxscore@gmail.com. Matt Cummings, we are going to cut straight to you as the introductory voice on this very special show.
Thank you so much, George. This show was a real mixed bag to put together. A lot of pleasure, but also very, very sad. The question of how to break down Stephen Sondheim, like, could be a dissertation. I literally might write a dissertation about this at some point. But
I think you already have. I'm looking at the notes right now.
On the Friday after Thanksgiving, I started to drive back to Chicago from my grandmother's house in northwestern Pennsylvania, and I decided that I wanted to listen to music instead of podcasts. And so I hit play on this list of Sondheim musicals that I had made months ago, and as I stopped for gas, I saw a text from my friends that Sondheim had died. And my first reaction was honestly one of shock, and then I kind of laughed at myself for feeling shock, because in a way, Stephen Sondheim felt completely eternal and immortal, which is an astonishing thing to say about a man who had famously bad hygiene and had a heart attack in his 40s and lived to be 91.
Yeah.
But I've listened to so much Sondheim all week, and really I've avoided as many of the retrospectives as I could and the tributes to him. I couldn't totally avoid them because I am a human being and I do go on the internet, but I've tried to consume as much of his art on his own terms as I could before diving into other people's memories of him and of his works. Because as you start to read every post and every essay, it becomes really clear that every person who loves Sondheim feels a deeply personal and intimate relationship with not only his works, but like the man himself.
Yes.
And so true.
And that insight is from a tweet that I stole from one of my favorite culture writers, Joanna Robinson at The Ringer. So like, see what I mean? I had to like tunnel vision in and see what we could come up with. But now I feel like I've gotten my own tribute out there, and I'm so happy to have you all along for the ride.
And yeah, it's one of those things, the notion of it being deeply personal. So while you were driving back from a family holiday, I was having a belated family holiday with some of my family when I got a notification on my phone. And I just sort of stood there looking at my phone and staring at it in shock, and knowing that something profoundly sad and deeply personal had just happened to me, and looking up at my Southern non-musical family and realizing that nobody would be able to understand or digest just what this meant, that this hero of mine had passed away. So I just took off and I ran to the bathroom and I just had a quick 3-minute cry and just like had a moment, and then I went back and drank Miller Lights with my uncles. But it was just, again, that moment of it being deeply personal. It was as if a friend died. It was really for me as if a friend died.
And there is so much work to listen to. I still haven't even gotten through all of it. I've been listening to it nonstop for a week and a half. But he was truly like a kaleidoscope of the American musical. Yes. His first show that he worked on, West Side Story, that premiered in 1957, it lost Best Musical to The Music Man. Jeez. Gypsy lost Best Musical to The Sound of Music and Fiorello in a tie.
Fiorello?
Yeah. A funny thing happened on the way to the forum. Beat Oliver. Like, these are the type of musicals that were
Not Oliver
in
Camacho,
vogue.
the show.
No, we would never. But like, this is where the art form was when Sondheim entered the game. Oscar Hammerstein was famously his mentor and his predecessor in the importance of like developing character arc within a musical. Cole Porter was still writing musicals at that time and songs. He was a master of those urbane and witty turns of phrase, who could entertain through sheer linguistic razzle-dazzle. And Sondheim's career like really takes a big turn in the 70s, where he picks up the mantle of cutting-edge shows like Cabaret and turns the American musical on its head and took it to much darker and thornier and like more ambiguous places. And they consist of these really elegant character studies where nothing really happens, but also everything happens because it's a deeply like human and personal drama. His characters are constantly lying to each other, to themselves, and yet somehow reveal truths that the Broadway musical had never attempted to plumb the depths of before. Meanwhile, by the time of his most recent Broadway show, like, Broadway is the domain of Disney. You've got Wicked, you've got Hairspray. Like, it's very much about adaptation and revival of already existing intellectual property. But, like, here's Stephen Sondheim still churning out new music in, like, year 60 of his career. Yeah. And the new work that does exist beside that corporate entertainment, like, wouldn't exist without the work that he had done decades earlier.
And these works, I mean, you know, they were all world premieres, obviously, right? But they feel so ingrained in the culture that they all feel like revivals. They feel like they've been with us forever. I suppose some of them have.
And every work of his, like, is so of its time, but also transcendent of it. He, like, his work is very rooted in that kind of deeper, darker, psychic exploration that was happening in the 70s in film, in TV, in music. And then in the 80s, he adapts into like a kinder but kind of wryly, tragically hopeful kind of thought leader among like all of that conservative cynicism and the turbulence of the 80s. And then we like move into the 90s and he's writing things like Passion, which has one of the most unlikable protagonists in theater. And Assassins, which is a show about would-be assassins and successful assassins of American presidents, and about how the American dream was a lie and only leads to inevitable violence, and how a gun is how you, take it upon yourself to fulfill your greatest destiny. And there's like a very high concept revival of Assassins happening right now that draws on footage of what happened on January 6th. Like, talk about trenchant, talk about timely. That's universal.
Matt, what about the man himself? Is he also a kaleidoscope?
Yeah, our understanding of him is similarly kaleidoscopic, like, because of all you get are like these little different colored pieces of glass that reflect and refract, and it's a marvelously like ever-changing image. He's kind of always the same and also always developing and always becoming new and like pursuing something different. He's an endless puzzle of a man who deeply loved puzzles and parallels and percussive alliteration.
Yes, all those cryptic crosswords he used to write. I'm a huge fan of the cryptic crosswords.
He lived many lifetimes, forged close relationships with entire generations of the theater community. A man who was deeply loved and cherished, and practically, if not fully, worshipped, both in his time and evidently after. And in part, I think this is due to his sheer longevity as a creator, like the leading creative genius of his time, and the transformation from Stephen Sondheim to Stephen Sondheim. Like, as I was listening to this discography, I was struck by how early tributes to Sondheim start appearing. In 1976, there are reviews that are made up just of songs from other Sondheim shows, or like songs that were cut from Sondheim shows. It's called Side by Side by Sondheim. Great name. Play on a song from Company. So 1976, that's pre-Sweeney Todd. That's pre-Into the Woods. That's pre-Sunday in the Park with George. He was already legendary even then. And there's been a tribute to him every couple of years since. And through it all, his work hardly ever dips in quality, as he manages to maintain like this level of both craftsmanship and novelty with every twist and turn of his career. And the shows swing wildly from topic to topic, from sound universe to sound universe, and they're breathtakingly virtuosic in their transformations, and yet they all sound like Sondheim. They're all tied together with that definitive authorial voice, by a mind that's always seeking a new challenge, and this distinctly humanist heart. And I really think that is why we who love Sondheim love his work and come back to it again and again and like discover something new every time. And it's that unmistakable humanity in everything single thing he put up on the stage. Like even Sweeney Todd has deeply, deeply human moments. And like for all the jokes, for all the witty lyrics, like that is the core that keeps this repertory alive.
Has deeply human pie fillings as well.
Yeah.
Nicely put.
We'll get to those, Weston. Don't you worry.
You got to be careful with your coriander.
You do. As we start handing out the Sondies on the show, what's our first category and what are our pieces that have been nominated?
When I think of Sondheim music, the songs that stay in my head, the songs that I think really drive home his most authentic compositional voice are the solos that he writes for his female characters, because they are they are almost to a rule the most complex character in the show. And like I said, like these characters so often are lying through their teeth. The lyrics of the song play on double meanings and subtext with their allusions and psychological explorations, and they are just a joy to like listen to as much as they are to interpret and to like plumb the depths of.
Yeah, and just to sort of dovetail on that a little bit, Matt mentioned some of the characteristics of like the lying through the teeth and lying to themselves and lying to everybody else. But to take a softer turn to it, Sondheim wrote women as complex characters before pretty much anybody else did in terms of live musical performances, whether it was in musical theater, frankly, in opera. Not many operas are passing the Bechdel test even now. But Sondheim wrote women as these characters that were multidimensional, multifaceted. They were
Anita, Marie, like Mama Rose, like those are Sondheim creations too.
Yeah, they're not all good. They're not all bad. They're beautifully flawed. He allowed them to have emotions and voices and speak their truths in ways that no one had before. And it's really interesting to see, even the women of the category that we're, about to talk about, sort of the trajectory of who each of these women were and their stories. They were all different and unique. But again, to go back to the word we've used a lot, human. They were terribly human.
So our
Who
nominees,
are the nominees
are first we've got from Merrily We Roll Along, we've got Not a Day Goes By. One of the closest things to like a standard tune. Not a lot of crossover hit tunes in Sondheim. Send in the Clowns, maybe. Being Alive, maybe. They didn't really like chart on the pop charts the way some of the older stuff did, and I think it's just because like they're too grounded in the context of the show that they don't always play the same way out of context. Merrily, but this is performed very frequently by Bernadette Peters, and it's about a woman who has learned that her husband is having an affair and she has to leave him, but she can't stop thinking about him. We've also got Another 100 People, which is one of the anchor songs of Company, which is a show about a man who is thoroughly, or a woman, depending on the production, who is very afraid of commitment and dates around and has all these friends of married couples. And this is one of his girlfriends who sings a song about New York City. And it feels like New York. Like it's bustling and it's buzzing. And the lyrics are all about like not really ever getting to know anyone because another 100 people are always getting on and off of a train. From Follies, we've got Losing My Mind, which is like a torch song pastiche about being deluded and lying to yourself and walking around thinking about how you are so in love with this person and they are not going to love you back because that's not what the relationship really is.
And from Company, we have the iconic Ladies Who Lunch. There aren't a ton of standalone songs, but this is definitely one that goes out there. It's been the subject of memes. It's been parodied in so many different ways. This is from a character in Company who is a woman of a more advanced age who has seen it all, done it all, has some regrets, but mostly has apathy towards the generations below her and the social class circles of the women who married well and do little else, but are supposedly having these enviable lives. And so she sings this fake tribute to these women who are, in her mind, vapid and ineffective. And it ends with everybody rise, rise, rise. And if you've ever heard this piece, you hear those rises, you'll stand, you'll leave your seat, you will rise. And then finally from Into the Woods, we have Moments in the Woods that's sung by the baker's wife. And speaking of, going back to that sort of humanistic quality, this is a character who has been given a task and is set out on a quest to do it, has a little bit of a distraction along the way that actually leads to something that she never would have imagined that she would do, which was be unfaithful to her husband. However, not strongly she feels about him at different times. And it's her entire character arc really happens in this 2.5 minutes of this song, which is good because she's immediately stepped on by a giant and dies right afterwards. So it's great that she gets her moment. But it really is sort of that start to finish. Like, she finally understands what about her journey is worth it and the lessons that she's learned along the way.
Well, for me, I want to hop right on it and vote. Ladies Who Lunch from Company for me is just in this list, and it's hard to pick. Is so strong as you.
It was hard to pick just 5.
I'll bet. But it's for a actor who is older. It has so much bite in it. It has so much kind of like vinegar, and I just think it's a complex piece of music. It's a complex piece of writing. For me, I would vote for that as best solo female.
I would say that the one that sticks for me, and mainly because it has a recognizable melody and can be sung, is Losing My Mind. And plus it feels very, bewitched, bothered, and bewildered, and I love that era of American songbook. I know that the words are much more clever in this, but it, like you said, it harkens back to torch songs of yore, and I'm nothing if not a nostalgic, loving person.
That's from Wicked, but we'll give it to you.
What's from Wicked?
I'm kind of torn between Company and Another 100 People and Ladies Who Lunch, but since I feel like I'm about to be the tiebreaker here, I have to go with which one will break the tie. I'm going to side with George. I'm going to give it to Ladies Who Lunch for the very first Best Solo Female category of the Sondies.
Good call. Bad call on Opera Box Score.
Good call, bad call. Oh my goodness. I could talk for days and weeks and months and years about Stephen Sondheim. We have to stop. Good call, bad call. Oliver Camacho, you get to go first.
Good call to my co-host, Ashlee Hardgrave, who was the first person to introduce me to Not Getting Married Today. I think we were doing some gig, or we used to be in this group that did a bunch of mixed cabaret-style performances where we'd mix classical with not classical. And I remember hearing her sing this when I barely knew her as a person. And I was like, oh, that song is really hard. I don't know how people do that. It is I don't know, it feels like Where Do You Breathe in that thing. And you can hear every word. I mean, it's written so well that you understand what's happening. But it feels like it's going by so fast that there's no way anybody could comprehend it. But it's really an incredible piece. And I wish we had a clip of Ashlee singing it right now.
I can still do it, but we won't do it now.
Matt Cummings.
One of the things that really encapsulates my love for Sondheim is the Documentary Now episode of making fun of the documentary that they made of recording the Company cast recording, which is called Co-op. John Mulaney plays Stephen Sondheim and does it perfectly.
It's
and
so
just
good.
like the specificity of what they parodize, like the mouthfulliness, how ridiculous the references in his lyrics are, the percussiveness, his ability to make lists. The aesthetics are perfect. And if you are a Sondheim lover after the show, you should definitely check out that episode. It's on Netflix, and the cast recording they've recorded is on Spotify.
Weston Williams.
I have a bad call relating to Sondheim. The one time I performed anything that was Sondheim related was a performance with a good friend of mine in college where he sang Agony together. And it was right after the film version came out, where with Chris Pine, and they tear the shirts open, and I did tear my shirt open in front of all my lovely friends, and that was my Sondheim experience.
Dreadful, absolutely dreadful.
We're so sorry for you, audience.
Ashlee Hardgrave.
I have two little YouTube nuggets for you. The first is we've talked a little bit about Sondheim's humor. He he was just so funny, and he was quick, and he was witty, and he was bright. And he wrote a parody song called "The Boy From," and it's a parody on sort of the bossa nova boy from Ipanema, and it ended up eventually in Side by Side by Sondheim. But there's a really hilarious recording of Linda Lavin doing it for his 90th virtual birthday tribute last year. So if you Google Linda Lavin, "The Boy From," it'll pop up. It's 2 minutes of time that it's absolutely worth your time. The second one is in the wake of Sondheim's passing. Of course, he was a big, he was a titan in the Broadway community. And so a few days after his passing on, I believe the 26th of November, a number of Broadway veterans and current performers got together to sing in a group the tune Sunday from Sunday in the Park with George. And to hear that many talents, that many powerful voices coming together to sing Sunday in that one moment is very... I have cried every time I've watched it, and that's been about 4. So have a little weep in old Stevie's honor.
I got a bad call and a good call as well. Bad call, a show we haven't talked about yet, would be Gold, or Wise Guys, or Bounce, or Roadshow, whatever you want to call it. I remember working at the Goodman Theater here in Chicago in 2003. When Sondheim came into the building, that place went absolutely bonkers. Sadly, that is not what the audience thought of that show, and it sort of withered and tried to come back and sort of went into a bit of obscurity. So many good calls, though, for Stephen Sondheim. Directing Sweeney Todd, one of the absolute joys of my life. Seeing John Doyle's production of Sweeney, of Company, when the artists also sing and also play instruments, is absolutely phenomenal. Check out John Doyle's work. That's it for this week's edition of America's Talk Radio Show about opera. Our announcer, he's Norm Woodel, and he's at normwoodel.com. On Facebook, search for Opera Box Score. Twitter, Instagram, we're at Opera Box Score. Help us deepen that bench of listeners by liking and sharing our social media posts. Email us your hot takes, operaboxscore@gmail.com. Drop us a line about Stephen Sondheim. Get an OBS beer coaster and an OBS lapel pin. Subscribe to the podcast, Stitcher Radio. Favorite the show, Apple Podcasts. Our creative consultant is Oliver Camacho. Our audio and video editor is Weston Williams. For your co-hosts, Matt Cummings and Ashlee Hardgrave, I'm George Cederquist, asking you to continue the conversation about opera as you send in the clowns. We're back with an all-new show next week. We catch up on the 2-minute drill. Well, probably be at least a 3-minute drill. Plus, you get more opera headlines, more hot takes, and more hot pies. Join us.